Hello and welcome. My name is Christopher Mark Reed. I'm an attorney. I practice law in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Palm Beach areas, as well as Naples, Fort Myers on the west coast of Florida. I've been practicing as an attorney for about 15 years, and throughout that time, throughout my whole life, I've had ups and downs, like many of you had. At this point in my life, I can truly say I am grateful and successful, and therefore I figured I would put some of my knowledge here for you on YouTube. My first video today that we're going to do is my top 10 books that I think everybody who wants to be successful must read. These are books that have helped influence and shape me to what I am today, and I am certain they will help you as well. So let's get into it. First book I have that I think you must read is called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. This is a very valuable book. It's not expensive. You can find it on Amazon. Many different versions and variations. This is a book that you need to read, you need to reread it, and you need to reread it again. One of the keys to this book is actually following the instructions in this book. If it tells you to go back and read a paragraph, read the paragraph again. If it tells you to reread the chapter, reread the chapter. If it tells you to go back and look something up, do it. Read it, follow the instructions, read it again, follow the instructions again, and you will not regret it. The next book on my list, it's actually a similar book, but it's a little bit shorter, a little bit quicker to read, but again, just as valuable. It's called The Science of Getting Rich. Like Think and Grow Rich, I guarantee you will not regret reading this book. It will open up your eyes and will seriously help you become more successful and satisfied with your life and your career. Third book on my list, this is more of a fun reading book, but for me, this is a book that really opened up my eyes to the joys of reading, and this is the book that led to me reading many other books. It's by Douglas Adams. It's called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is actually a compendium of all of the Hitchhiker's Guide books. There's several in the series. Read them, love them. They're great, they're entertaining, they're funny, and hopefully, like you, they will awaken a true joy of reading in your life. I don't know anybody who has not read Douglas Adams and has truly come to love the books. The best advice in this whole book, too, for life and being successful: don't panic. It's true. It's really true. And again, it's a great book. The next book on my list, I don't actually have a copy here because I'm doing this video out of my office, as you can see. I don't have all of my pleasure reading books here, but it's also by Douglas Adams. It's called Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. It's a great, amazing book. Again, it's funny, it's entertaining, and you will not regret reading it. Personally, for me, it was very influential because when I read that book, actually, I was working as a private investigator. Dirk Gently is the character in that book. He's a private investigator with some unusual detective methods. One of his methods is he will pick a random person and will start following them and see where that leads, and that usually will lead him to clues and other things that will lead him to solving his case. Very interesting, very funny. But for me, actually, when I read that story, I was working as a private investigator, like I said, in 1999. That's going way back 20 some odd years ago, which will help you get an idea of exactly how old I am. But I just finished the book, and I had just gotten this new case in Miami. It's where I was working mostly at the time. And I was to follow this person whose name is Manny Garcia, making up the name to protect the actual identity of the person I was following. But I started that morning, I had my report. All we had was the name of the person, his address, and his age, his date of birth. That's all I had. Usually we have a lot more information. We have some vehicle information. We do searches and things like that. Tried everything on this guy. Nothing came up. So I show up bright and early, about 5, 10 a.m. Usually the first day on a case when we're following somebody. Since we don't know if they're going to leave for work, and sometimes people leave early, we show up, really early in the morning to get there before they leave. When I show up, no cars, nothing. I'm like, great, maybe he already went to work. So I sit, park my car, wait a little bit, starts to get a little bit lighter out. I'm like, all right, let me go see what I can do. I go up to the house and I could see there's nothing. The house was empty. It was clear. You could see straight through it. No furniture, anything. No cars, no sign of life. You could tell the lawn hadn't been mowed in a few days. And I was like, great, I got nothing. Now what am I going to do? Not one to give up. I didn't have another case to go to that day either, so it was either make this case work and make some money, or go home and basically not make any money that day, maybe get paid for an hour or two. So I wait a little bit until the neighbors start to get up, about 7:30, 8 o'clock. I see some neighbors coming out. I start asking questions, trying to find out anything. Does he work? Do they know where he works? Do they know what he looks like? Do they know where he moved? Did he move close? Maybe I can get some information. And after about an hour of talking to different neighbors, the only information I have is, 1, he's got a baby face, and 2, he drives a red Nissan 4-door automobile. That's it. That's all I have. And I'm like, great. That's it. I'm done. So I'm about to head home for the day, and then suddenly I think, well, what would Dirk gently do? He'd just follow somebody and see where it leads. So I'm like, all right, let me do it. So I sit there waiting. A few cars come by. Finally, a car comes by, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to follow that car. So I start following it. This is in Miami, the Little Havana area off Calle Ocho, Southwest 8th Street. Driving around through some side streets. After about 10 minutes, we're driving down this street, and I see a red 4-door Nissan. And I'm like, oh, that's all I got. So I pull up about 300 feet ahead. In this area, this section is only parallel parking. So I park my car about 300 feet ahead. I get out, and I start walking towards the Nissan. I'm like, all right, let's see what I can get. It's probably going to be nothing. As I get closer, I see there's somebody sitting inside of it, in the driver's side seat. And I'm like, okay, now that, I get starting to get the little goosebumps and everything. And as I get closer, I see it's a male. I'm like, great. And as I get closer, I'm like, he's got a baby face. At this point, I'm like, like the angels are singing, and, all of my hairs are all raised, and I'm like, whoa. So I keep walking, and I walk past the car, try to discreetly get the tag number, walk around the block because I don't want to just, be too obvious what I'm doing. So I walk around the block, get back to my car, get on my phone, I run the tag. And I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. And the name comes back, and I forget the name, but, it's not Manuel Garcia, it's not Manny. And I'm like, oh, no. And then it starts reading the address. And I decide to listen. I almost hung up, but I listened, and I wrote the address down. And when I wrote the address down, I was sitting there for a second and just awe, because the address the car came back to was the house I had started off that morning. At that point, I was like, whoa, this is my guy. So now I'm like, oh, wow. So I get ready, I get my camera ready, start filming him, because, I could still, a few cars had moved away, so I get some video of him, get some close-ups so I could, verify who he is if I can get a photograph or something. So we wait there for about an hour, and then two women come up to his car, get in. Looked like this area there was some hospitals and medical offices, so it looked like they were, at the doctor's, and he was probably waiting for them. So I start following them around, they go to a pharmacy, they go to a couple other stores, and then finally, about 4 o'clock, 4:30, they pull into a driveway of this house, and they get out, and they go inside, and they're like, all right, this is where he lives, it's his new address. But now I have to verify that this is, in fact, Manuel Garcia. So I'm like, how the heck am I going to do that? Well, first, we're in Miami. Everybody speaks Spanish. I don't speak enough Spanish to do this type of confirmation. I could try something, but if I go there and knock on the door, hey, I'm looking for Manuel Garcia, it could be him, or it could be somebody just saying that just to, make me go away, or anything could happen. So I'm like, all right, that's not going to work. So I call up my boss and his name was Bill. I call Bill and I tell him what happens. He's like, oh, how are we going to do this? And I said, I need somebody here who speaks Spanish. And so he's like, all right, let me send somebody. So he calls another investigator. His name is Chris. He comes over and he's like, all right, so what are we doing here? And I'm like, well, show him the video, show him the face of the guy. I say, you need to find out who this is. I need to know if this is my guy. He's like, well, what's his name? And I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, because if I do that, then it's not going to work. I said, you just go there, I don't know, pretend you're a neighbor or something. He's like, yeah, no, you know what? I got it. I can do it. And Chris was an amazing investigator, so I knew he could do it too. And he spoke Spanish, English, everything. So he goes, knocks on the door. About 25, 30 minutes later, he comes back and he's like, his name's Manuel Garcia. Manny. And I'm like, that's my guy. At that point again, the hairs are raised. I call Bill up, we tell him, yep, it's our guy. And he's like, I don't know how we're going to explain this to the client, but may the force be with you. So that's why that book is not really one of the best books, but for me, I loved it, and that really affected my life moving forward. The next book on my list, I believe I'm at number 5, is a book by a gentleman named Joe Girard. It's actually Joe Girardi. He changed his name. He is the world's greatest salesman. Actually, he was the world's greatest salesman. Unfortunately, he did pass away a few years ago. But he wrote this book, How to Sell Yourself. And it is truly a really good book. But also, no matter what you do, whether you're a math teacher, college professor, an engineer, doctor, scientist, car salesman like Mr. Girard, he sold cars for automobiles for a living. Whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, ultimately what you're doing is you're selling yourself. If you're flipping burgers at a restaurant or your own restaurant and you're selling your food, you're selling yourself. If you're trying to get a raise, you're trying to get a job, trying to get a promotion, again, you're selling yourself. You're trying to get into a school, trying to go to law school, you're selling yourself. If you can learn how to sell yourself, if you can learn how to sell anything, and you will be successful no matter what you do. So this book is worth its weight in gold. Next book on my list, it's by Paulo Coelho. It's called The Alchemist. It's a short book, it's a quick read, it's an easy read, it's a good read. I believe hundreds of millions of people have read this book and loved it. Hundreds of millions of people cannot be wrong. Read this book. You'll love it. You will not regret it. The next book on my list, I'm kind of cheating here, but it's worth it. On this, I put all of the classics. These are all of the books you should have read while you were in school. They were assigned to you. You probably didn't read them. You probably read the Cliff's Notes, or your friend read them and told you a little bit. They gave you a little summary. But I want you to go back and read them. That's Shakespeare. Shakespeare's got tons of good books. Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, The Taming of the Shrew, Mark Twain. I know some of his books are banned now because they make people feel uncomfortable. but they're good, they're humorous, and you have to understand when they were written. They were written at a time in this country, when things were a little different, but they're still good books, and it's worthwhile to read them. Tolkien, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings. I know everybody thinks, well, now they think of the movies, which are great, but the books are truly a must-read. Read them, enjoy them. And the reality is there's no bad classics. I know some of them can be difficult to read, especially if you get into things like Homer and things like that, Beowulf. But that's what's good about them, is they're not easy to read. You have to think. You have to work through it. It's going to take you some time. But put the effort in. Before you read the book, sit there and do some affirmations. I'm going to read this story. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to focus. And I will learn from this experience. Do that. Sit. Read the books. And once you do that, you'll realize there really is no bad classic book. To Kill a Mockingbird. Well, there's one bad classic book. That's Frankenstein. With all due respect to Mary Shelley, it's a horrible book. Don't read it. But all the other classics, go ahead, read them, enjoy them, and learn from them. Next book on my list, number 8, Psychocybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. This book will teach you how your brain works and how to use your brain to become more successful and more at peace with yourself and content with who you are, what you are, and where you're going. And this will take you very far. Next book on my list it's a book by Robert Greene. It's called Mastery. Again, this is a very, very good book. Like all of these, I keep saying these are good books, but read them and find it out for yourself. No matter what you do, eventually you're going to find the one thing that you truly love and enjoy, and you want to master that. And whether it's playing the guitar, whether it's being a lawyer, whether it's being a negotiator, an architect, an engineer, a blacksmith, a plumber, an electrician, you want to become a master at what you do. This book will teach you how to do that. And that will help you achieve a more successful and fulfilled life. The last book on my list, obviously, like I said before, I'm an attorney. Therefore, this book, especially if you're thinking about becoming a lawyer, going to law school, studying to pass the bar, or you're already an attorney, this book is a must-read by far, more than any other legal book out there. It's called McElhaney's Trial and Notebook. You can see my copy is torn up, battered, and beaten. I've had this book for a few years. This is my third copy. First two copies, I literally worn them out to the point where they fell apart. As a lawyer, this book is probably what I would credit most with my success as an attorney. But even if you're not an attorney, if you're going to be successful no matter what career you're in, if you keep rising and improving your position, you will put yourself in positions where you may need legal advice, counsel, you may even need legal representation. Having read this book, you'll be that much further ahead. You'll have a better understanding of what to look for and what you need when that arises. Therefore, I think this is an important book. That's why I put it on my list, even though most of you may not be attorneys. I still think it's something that will be very beneficial for you. If you ever need to hire an attorney, especially if it's an attorney who's going to be going to trial on a matter for you, if the attorney has not read this book, I would seriously question why you're hiring them. Now, that's my top 10. There are many, many runners-up that I consider putting on this list. Too many to go through. We could sit here for hours, but Anything by Terry Pratchett will be good. He's got amazing books, the Discworld series, and some other series he wrote. They're amazing. Anything by Neil Gaiman is good. Books written by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman together. I believe they did a book together called Good Omens. Amazing stories, amazing book. Read it. Stephen King. Gosh, there's so many things. Any books by Roger Dawson. He's got a few really good books. One book I have here, Secrets of Power Negotiating. Learning how to negotiate, whether you're negotiating a raise or which vacation you go to with your wife, negotiating with your children, negotiating when you're purchasing a car, a home. Something you really should read and learn from. Anything from Dale Carnegie or the Carnegie Institute, Tony Robbins, many books out there. Earl Nightingale, even some other classic books, the Bible, the Quran. Well, don't sit there and try to read the whole Bible. It's pretty boring for the most part. But there are some good books in there and some really good stories. One story in the Bible, the book of Job, Job, is a really good story. Read that. Read some other books. Paulo Coelho does some other books too. Another book he wrote that I really like is called The Warrior of Light. It's if you've ever read like Sun Tzu, The Art of War, things like that, a lot of your Asian philosophies. It's more like a summary of all of that, but it's very good, and it's actually better than the originals. He really puts out some really good knowledge that I think will benefit you. But again, any other book, anything you love, enjoy, whether it's factual history, true crime, fantasy, science fiction. As long as you're out there and you're reading, you're learning, you're using your brain, and you're improving yourself. So that's all I really have for you today. Last thing I'll tell you is get out there, read, gain knowledge. Many ways to gain knowledge, not just reading. Experience doing things. But most importantly, put that knowledge to work and become successful. I hope you like this video. I hope it helps you. If you have any other books you want to discuss or things you think I should put on a list or books that influenced your life, please comment below, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.